Welcome, everybody. My name is Nathaly Batista-Morales, and I'm the co-founder of the Women of Color Collective. We're collaborating with Freedom Friday to continue the interview series, The Issues. The Issues began last month with sharing information on Austin's local elections. For this part of the series, Freedom Friday is collaborating with the Women of Color Collective to highlight current issues affecting our community and to share about how we can get more involved. These short conversations will lead up to an interactive panel hosted by the Women of Color Collective on Sunday, August 23rd at 3 p.m. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Women of Color Collective ATX to access the sign-up link in our bio. For today's interview, we have with us Montserrat Garibay. Good morning, Montserrat.
Hi, buenos dias.
She's the Secretary-Treasurer of Texas AFL-CIO. She's the former VP of Education Austin, and she's also a National Board Certified Teacher. Originally from Mexico City, she's passionate about workers' rights, immigration, early childhood, and voting rights. She's a graduate of the University of Texas with a master's in bilingual education. In her free time, Montserrat enjoys running, gardening, and making masks. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us today.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Thank you.
So we're going to jump into the questions. You've done so much in terms of advocacy, immigrant rights, labor rights, education, like a lot out there. So just tell us, what are you doing right now and what organizations are you representing?
Yes, well, thank you for having me. Well, you know, I think as Latinas, we always hold very different identities, right? Myself as an immigrant who came to the US undocumented I've been here for 28 years. I've had many different roles, but right now I'm serving as the Secretary-Treasurer of the Texas AFL-CIO. And we are the federation that represents 245,000 union members throughout the state of Texas. And what this means is that we represent from educators to postal workers, electricians, carpenters, hotel workers, steel workers, poultry workers, musicians, so many throughout the whole state of Texas. And we assist them with their internal campaigns, but also at the Texas AFL-CIO, we have different campaigns that are political. Some of them, of the campaigns help eligible permanent residents up to apply to become US citizens. We have just different campaigns that basically uplift and are working to defend the workers in the state of Texas to be treated with dignity and respect.
Thank you so much. That's covering a lot of professions out there. I had no idea it was so broad. Good. So now can we dive in a little bit more into labor rights and more education specific? How do you get involved into this area? Is there like a special personal story that you would like to share?
Yeah, so, well, I don't come from a union family. I started teaching in Austin ISD for 8 years. I taught pre-K for 8 years, and I was always a member of Education Austin with Texas AFT. And I was very active. I volunteer. I was the rep in the school, and I got really involved when the legislators at the Texas legislators wanted to cut the funding for full day pre-K. And when I learned about it, the state cut the funding, which meant we used to have full day pre-K for all eligible 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds to go to school. And the state cut that to half day. And in a way, when I learned about it, I felt in a way it was selfishly saying, like, how am I going to have 40 kids instead of 20 children in my classroom? And how I felt very upset to the fact that many of the parents were working full time and they weren't going to have the luxury of saying, oh, boss, I'm going to go get my child, at 12:30 and I'm not going to come back. The reality is that, when you look at the research and statistics, you see that children of color, are not reading at the proper grade level and they failed exams, and it's just a wheel of not getting enough education and the pipeline to prison, right? Yeah. So I was really upset about that. And I remember calling my union and saying, what are y'all going to do about this? And the president was Luis Malfaro, and he was like, you are the union. What are you willing to do? Even though you pay dues, what is it that you want to do? So we started being very proactive, and we started to have a committee of early childhood teachers, and we signed up members. We talked to every single school board member about the importance of full day pre-K. We did research about why the pre-K program was so good for children, ESL, English language learners. So long story short, we did that for like 6 months. We engaged the family members, the parents, the community, the organizations. And on the last month where the superintendent was going to pass the budget, we filled every school board meeting with parents sharing their stories and why this was so important. And the superintendent and the school board members decided to fund the full day pre-K program.
That's amazing.
And that's when I learned the power of organizing. Yeah. And the power that, you know, you have as a community when there's an issue that's important to you. You might not have a lot of money, but you have people power. And yes. That right there, when I learned to organize, that experience really changed my whole view on how to organize in different issues. So years later, I decided to run for the vice president of Education Austin, and I got elected. And I was doing a lot of immigration work at the time as well. And we started integrating what is called social justice unionism, where unions, yes, we do the bread and butter issues, which is advocating for better pay, better healthcare, right? But we added the social justice component of immigration. You know, a lot of people say, well, teachers are not political. They're not supposed to be political. Yeah. My answer to them is, as teachers, we're political every single day, right? When you have a student that comes to your classroom and doesn't have glasses or hasn't eaten food, what do you do as a teacher? You go look for the counselor, the parent support specialist, and you start advocating for that child, right? So that's something that that we added to when I got elected, and we started really doing the social justice unionism work that really opened the doors for me to really advocate in a different way. That really propel all the work that we started doing with immigration, but also professional development for teachers as well as for classified employees, because our union represented bus drivers, custodians, monitors, and that's how I really got started through that. But it also allowed me, the fact that I speak Spanish, you know, I was able to connect with those bus drivers and those custodians in a different way. So we passed a lot of different ways that they were able to be helped. And that, to me, that was kind of like the moment where I decided this is where I found my voice. But not only I found my voice, I also identified different leaders in our union, and I helped them facilitate their leadership so they could also find their voice, so they could also advocate for themselves. And that's been the most beautiful work that I've ever done.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I really can't wait for teachers, specifically bilingual teachers, to hear this story. I work with them at UT, and I'm like very inspired to see the power of Education Austin and other organizations out there. So fast forwarding a little bit to now, can you tell us your perspective on how Austin is handling or addressing the return to school during COVID? It's a little bit related to what you talked about in your previous experience with pre-K. So what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, we're definitely living very uncertain times. And the way that I feel very grateful to live here in Austin and to have the mayor and the city council members that we have, because I feel that as Austin, we have been very proactive and we have been pushing the envelope to a certain degree, right? We have a governor that didn't do the proper work that was supposed to do in enforcing everybody to use masks. Mm-hmm. The sudden reopening of businesses and whatnot, right? And in my role now, all the unions are part of us, and they are really hurting. And when I talk to teachers and Texas AFT and TSTA and ask them what they're doing, I feel that they're really organizing and they're really pushing and demanding that when they go back to school, that it's safe.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I talk to teachers and employees of the district and workers, they want to go back to teaching.
Yeah.
They want to go back. They want to make sure that they're teaching their kids. They miss their kids, right?
Yes.
But it's also really important that it's done safe, in a safe way. You know, whether it's having massive COVID testing in the work sites, whether it is having the personal protective equipment such as masks, gloves, etc. They need to have that, you know. And I think really sharing the importance of being vocal and being strategic on how you organize about this is really important. I think we often hear a lot about the teachers. Yeah. The teachers, yes, and they're very well organized, but most of the time we don't hear about the backbone of our public schools, the custodians, the bus drivers, the mechanics, the ladies that work in the cafeteria. Absolutely. Those are people that many times are invisible, mm-hmm. right? We don't know their names. We don't hear their stories. And when I talk to them, I hear the fact that, you know what, the reality is that, yes, Austin is a very progressive city, but the reality is that the federal minimum wage, it's still $7.25 since 10 years ago. So you have a city that is really rich in many aspects, but the workers who are people of color don't have proper healthcare, right? They don't have housing, and their wages are still very low. So yes, you have COVID-19. I feel that it's really opened the eyes of our community about those uncertainties of workers, because they are hurting. And these are members that live in our communities, right? These are the people that we see at HEB, at Target. These are the people that make our communities. And if they're not getting paid properly, if they are not having good health care, this is all a circle, right? And I think sharing those stories is really important, but advocating, it's also really important. And I'm very glad that we have organized labor here in Austin is doing that, but we need to push that throughout the whole state of Texas, because there's a lot of things that we still need to get done.
Absolutely. Yes. And the last question we have for you today is, you know, our community is built of women of color here at the Women of Color Collective, and then people of color in Freedom Friday. How can we be more active, and how can we advocate for these issues while we're also still in the midst of COVID?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I think first and foremost is, if you are eligible to vote, right? Register to vote and vote. Number two, fill out your census. Right now, if you don't fill out your census, we're not going to be counted for 10 years. So that's something that you can do at home. You can advocate for your community to have enough resources in terms of having better highways, better schools, more public schools, more hospitals, etc. That's something that you can do at home. It doesn't cost you anything to do. Second of all, is all about organizing. Right now, there's the HEROES Act, and we need the HEROES Act to be able to get people to work. We need the HEROES Act to be passed, because our post office needs that money. Talk about vote by mail. Mm-hmm. We are in a precarious way right now where we don't know what's going to happen with that. I think another thing that we all can do, as a teacher, I always say sharing is caring. Share information. If you know that there's going to be a food drive around your community and you're in Facebook, it doesn't cost you anything to share that in your page, right? And to send your friends. And, also a lot of times sending your friends who are older, maybe living by themselves. Hey, how are you? Hey, there's going to be a food drive. Do you need any help? Do you need me to deliver your food? Do you need me to pick up your medicine? I think that that's the importance. It's a very important thing that we all can do, and it doesn't cost you much. And it's just in moments like this is when the kindness of people are really tested, and we all can do that.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you again, Montserrat, for being with us for this short interview. And thank you, Freedom Friday, for providing the platform to highlight all these important issues. As we mentioned before at the beginning of the interview, if you like what you heard here today, if you have more questions for Montserrat or our other panelists, and you want to continue this conversation, please join us on August 23rd for our Are We Too Quiet Again? Women of Color Reigniting the Activism Movement in Austin event. Be sure to register using the Eventbrite link in our Instagram bio. See you soon.
Great, thank you.